Perfect. There you go. I'm going to welcome everybody again. Thank you for joining tonight's volunteer training, our final session. If you have questions, please unmute yourself. I would like it to be more engaging and back and forth than me just kind of lecturing. I'm happy to answer questions as we go along. Hopefully I will answer those who aren't on the live questions as the training goes on, but if you have questions following the watching of this recording, please email them to me, myself, or Diane, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. So my last day is Thursday, which is June 24th. And Diane, who is on this call, also listed as Stella Weiss at iCloud, which might be a bit confusing, but the one that just laughed, that's Diane. She's our new volunteer coordinator and will be replacing part of me in the volunteer aspect role. So she is who you'll be emailing following Thursday. And following up in regards to set scheduling and a few other loose ends that I'm going to leave for Diane to tie up before I leave. I am going to send out an email that will introduce Diane and her contact information so that you can expect or add her into your contacts so that you know to reach out to her for any questions or concerns or any just follow up. So first, I'm going to start out by just explaining how a call comes into victim services, and there's been some kind of general questions that are standard questions that we get at victim services by new volunteers. So hopefully by doing that, it'll be able to answer some of those questions that you may be having. We have a 24-hour app that we use. That's how we dispatch our volunteers. So we have team leads. We have staff that cover the on-call Monday to Friday, 8 to 6. So that's me during the day. And then Diane will be taking that over as of Friday of this week. And then team leads. So we have 4 team leads that cover on call from 6 p.m. to 8 a.m. the following morning. Our team leads are Lee Marchildon, Leslie Galloway, Barb Ellis, and Rhonda Fry. So those would be 4 folks that you'll be hearing from as you donate hours. All of our team leads touch base with you either at the beginning of the week or each night. They kind of have their own process or formality of how they reach out to their volunteers. But just letting you know that this is who's on, or they're your team lead for the week or the time that you're on call. And if there's something that comes up or you have any questions, just to kind of create a bit of a rapport and a bit of back and forth, that this is who you'll be hearing from. So they're covering from 6 p.m. to 8 a.m. And we're all on this app. Very fancy. We used to use a call center, but nonprofit organizations likes to find ways to make money or save money, not make money. And this was a way of doing that. So this is what you're not going to be able to see that. Not that it matters. Anyways, we can just all make ourselves available based on who's on call, and it just rings right through to our phone. So it used to go to a call center that then in turn would had to call us, but it goes to this app now that just goes directly to our phones and we answer the call. Sometimes, a lot of the time we're called right directly from dispatch, like from OPP dispatch, that there's an officer on scene somewhere requesting our support. One thing I want to make kind of clear is we are not often given a lot of information. So that's where it's really important when you're on scene that you are literally our collector of information. So I don't want you to assume that we have names, phone numbers. We often have none of that. We have, what's a recent one that we've done, I've dispatched to? We have a family, husband, wife, and child that have a deceased son by suicide. This is the address, and this is where you're going. And they need 2 volunteers. That's kind of all often we're getting from dispatch. Then we always ask as a team lead or a staff member who the contact is on scene. So who's kind of the lead officer or lead fireman or lead EMS, whoever's kind of been dispatching us. So we have a point of contact. And then also our team or our volunteers, when they show up on scene, they kind of know who they're asking for, which is always helpful. Because there's always going to be a lead somewhere in the where you're responding to. So then our team leads gather that information, which, as I said, is oftentimes very basic. and we're reaching out to our volunteers. So we have a schedule that we draft up of everybody's hours that have been submitted. And we go to that schedule and say Shiloh's on call with Elisa, that we're calling you, giving you the details that we have and getting you dispatched. We often, or how I do it, again, every team lead might be a bit different. For Shiloh, for example, I would give you Elisa's cell phone number and say, this is her contact information if you two want to meet up and drive to the scene together, or based on me personally, I know where everybody lives or a general geographical location. So sometimes I can help coordinate that. But that might not be the case for every time you get called. It might just be easier to take out the middleman, touch base with the volunteer that you're responding with, and figure out what's kind of the shortest route, whether you're meeting at a Tim Hortons somewhere or whether you're just going to meet at the scene. So you're grabbing your kit and you're attending to the scene. We often ask you for a estimated time of arrival. So say you're living Belleville and you're responding to somewhere in Napanee, you're going to say, I'm like 30 to 45 minutes from the scene. And then that's where the team leads are calling back to the officer on scene that has requested us and saying, I have Shiloh and Elisa attending. Their estimated time of arrival is 30 to 45 minutes. And then the officer kind of knows that they're expecting two females, or a male and a female, or whomever, to arrive on scene, and they'll a time frame, and they'll keep their eye out for that. So as a volunteer, now you're en route. Once you arrive at the scene, let me back up. Some things to know here. In order to get called on scene, the victim services has to be accepted by the folks that are wanting support. So police are always offering our services to folks that are enduring or involved in a crisis or a tragic circumstance. It doesn't always mean they accept us, or sometimes they're confused and don't even know what we are, so they automatically say no. So then we're often getting a follow-up call in the office the following day. When they do say yes for on-scene support is when we're dispatching volunteers. The only time that's a consent is not required is when there's a death, that police can just make that judgment call and request us on scene. But that's why sometimes when we get there, they turn us away because the family hasn't necessarily been asked, or they did say yes and they've changed their mind. Maybe families showed up, whatever the circumstances. So when you arrive on scene, you're kind of approaching the home and you're just going to ask to whoever the lead is or whoever the officer's name, if you have one. Then they will kind of give you a summary of the situation, that family's inside. Maybe the deceased is in the house. Maybe this is just the example I'm using of a suicide. Maybe they're in the backyard. Maybe they're in the front yard. Maybe they're not even present on scene, but they'll give you an idea of kind of a rundown of the family dynamics, who's really struggling, kind of where they're at and what they're hoping you can assist with. And then you kind of go in and read your own scenario and let your kind of instincts and common sense take over from there. Again, my cat is so chatty. Get down. Get down. It's not the kids, it's the pets. And then you're just kind of reading the scenario, and that's where having that seasoned volunteer in the beginning is really helpful, because you'll be able to let them take the lead and you can just kind of read a room. But as long as you have common sense and have problem solving skills, you'll be able to kind of just slide in there and know where you're useful, whether it's just providing emotional support, or maybe you need to make a phone call, maybe they need a place to stay. Lots of different ways to be useful. Maybe it's just making coffee or making a tea, or maybe they have no food in the house and you have to run out and grab something, or maybe there's a child involved that needs diapers. There's always kind of those circumstances where you can really find a way to be helpful, and helping just kind of people make those decisions of getting connected to their natural support system or moving them through to what those next decisions are. Which all goes back to like the training and understanding the circumstances involved and having that contact with your team lead back in, like they'll often check in with you by text, just like, have you arrived? How's it going? Do you need anything from me? So if you're a volunteer on scene and you're like, they're going to need accommodations tonight, I have no idea where to start with that. That's when you reach out to the team lead and say like, I got a family of 3. They can't stay here. It's a crime scene, or the police are telling them they have to leave. they have nowhere to go, they have no money. And that's where the team leads can be really helpful in starting kind of that process and seeking out additional supports and then getting it back to you, where you then can continue providing that emotional support on scene and being present with them. And the team leads can do some of the work in the background. Or maybe based on your work or personal experience, you have some general knowledge in those areas, or maybe you know that they need a shelter, it's a domestic situation, and you're just going to call the shelter because you know what they are. You can take that initiative and do it yourself, but the team leads are always there to bounce ideas back. Use them as kind of your Google search if you need to, if you're not really sure where to start yourself. That's where they can be super helpful. As I said, on scene, sometimes it lasts 4 minutes, sometimes it can last 8 hours. It very much depends on the call. One thing to keep in mind, if you're ever, like say you've donated your hours, but you have to work the next day, or you need to pick up your child from daycare, or you have it's coming to the end of the call and you need to be relieved, totally fine to call the team lead and say, I need to be replaced. Or, if you can wrap up the call so we don't have to send out another volunteer just to reintroduce them and get them caught up, that's helpful. But that's not always an ideal situation, or doesn't always work like that. So I've had to relieve volunteers myself, or send out a new volunteer to relieve them at a hospital because they've been there for a significant amount of time and maybe don't have a natural support system that can come in. So that sometimes happens, but again, you're volunteering your time and your hours. So if you need to go, or there's circumstances that come up that just aren't going to work anymore, then that's fine. Just have that really open lines of communication with team leads and staff, and we're happy to go back and forth with you about that. So then once you're kind of wrapping up the call, and a lot of questions I get is, how do I know when it's time to leave? But you will know when it's time to leave. When it's either you're kind of becoming a dependent for a person, where they're not wanting you to leave because they don't want to be left by themselves overnight, where now you have to kind of create that those boundaries and say, like, someone's going to touch base with you tomorrow. And you're always welcome to say that staff from victim services are going to touch base with you tomorrow. If they are very much, if it's a work week, staff are going to be following up the next day anyways. If it's not a work week and it's the weekend, you can always request the team lead touch base with them the following day. So say the incident happened on a Friday, they'd really appreciate a follow-up call the next day. You can always offer that to them, and then team leads can take that responsibility and touch base with them the following day, just to check in. So, or you're going to notice where they're kind of becoming not uncomfortable with you there, but they're wanting to either be by themselves, or maybe their family has arrived and you're kind of being phased out. And that's when you'll know, like, okay, it's time for me to leave. Once you're in your car, if you've drove with the volunteer, that's always helpful, because often you're debriefing on the way back to your car. You're kind of talking about the call, how things went, how you felt about it. Most often that's kind of the topic of conversation once you've left the scene, and debriefing with each other. If not, that's when the team lead's always going to check in with you regardless whether you drove with someone or not. And they're going to touch base with you and debrief with you as well. So just making sure that you're feeling okay, that you have no questions or concerns. And that's where you can really kind of have that reassurance and validation that you made the right referrals, or that you maybe suggested this, was that the right thing to do? And team leads will be able to kind of give you that validation right away, which is always super helpful when it's that quick. And then you're going to get a call from staff or executive director, JJ, within 3 days, normally 72 hours, we do a follow-up debrief call, just to check in and make sure that you're still doing fine, and that, we have some tough calls that we attend. So want to just make sure that you're still in check and it hasn't affected your mental health at all. And if it has, let's chat it out. Let's figure out how to help you through that process and process the information and get you back feeling well and back to wanting to volunteer, because you're volunteering for these positions. We're not here to traumatize you by any means either. So we want to make sure that you leave this program as good as you came into it. And we have the supports available if you're needing some additional supports. Once you get home is when you're doing all your documents. I get that sometimes it's at 3 o'clock in the morning and the last thing you want to do is paperwork. And if there's a lot of detail involved, I can be lenient in that, but at least get me names and numbers. because it might be 3:00 in the morning for you, but I need to call them at like 10:00 the next day. Especially, I mean, there's always different circumstances, but say I need to coordinate crime scene cleanup from a suicide, they're not going to necessarily want to wait 48 hours for me to reach out to them to have that happen. So just, I always like to stress the importance of like, I don't have contact information for them. Staff do not necessarily have contact information from them. That's what you've collected on scene. And getting that to us is so important so that we can follow up the next day with some of those immediate services that they may need. Maybe it's a domestic, maybe they need a lock change. The victim's been allowed to return home, but the accused has a key. So let us kind of be able to slide right in there the next day and kind of take over and not take over necessarily, but continue that ongoing support and making sure all their needs are being met. So that's kind of a quick, long-winded overview of start to finish of what a call looks like. One thing I want to mention is that scenes are always secure. So before you're dispatched, we know it's safe. If it's a domestic, we know the accused has been apprehended. You're never sent to a domestic where the accused is at large and hasn't been located. We're not putting you in a situation where your risk is going to possibly be compromised. The only time that the accused may be at large and we're sending you on scene, we would never obviously send you to the victim's home, but we would send you to the hospital or the police station to support someone if the accused was still at large. One thing to note, when you're going to the domestic, we ask that you don't wear anything identifying yourself. So that would not be the time to wear your fluorescent vest into a detachment. That would be attire that you would necessarily choose. Or if you are wearing our volunteer t-shirt that we equipped you with in your kit, just make sure the logo is not, it's just a small one anyway, so it's not necessarily big and identifying. But we wouldn't want anyone, if they were watching them, to know kind of your contact to the situation. But know that those kind of risk assessments are being taken into consideration before volunteers are even being dispatched. Volunteers Victim Services is not dispatched if it's a crisis for someone. If it's significant mental health, they are calling the CHIT team, they are calling Crisis from Addictions and Mental Health, they are not calling us. Yes, sometimes people are obviously in crisis when enduring tragic circumstance, but if the mental health is definitely significant on scene, we're not sending our volunteers. And police aren't honestly asking us to come because they know that's not the kind of support that we provide, that they very much need to contact addictions and mental health. When you're arriving on scene, in most circumstances, there's going to be emergency personnel there. When you're arriving, fire's still going to be there, EMS is still going to be there, police are often, more cases than not, our main referring agency, and they are always on scene. So you're not arriving alone. You might be the only one there representing Victim Services, but there's going to be an abundance of other people there from other supporting agencies that you can collaborate with, ask questions with, and be there on scene with. The only time that sometimes changes is when it's a sudden death. There have been times when staff or volunteers have arrived on scene and there might be only like one officer left kind of waiting for us to arrive, and then we're left with the family. If you're not comfortable with this, obviously you can call for more support and a team member would be able to come and support you or another volunteer. But honestly, waiting for the coroner to come and pronounce the body deceased and making sure that it was like a death by natural causes, or being able to identify the death and make sure that I'm probably not using the correct language about this, but that an investigation or an autopsy doesn't need to be completed. You're waiting for the coroner like 6 to 8 hours. It's kind of not you specifically, but the family is. So, and police have to stay with the body until the coroner can release it and the funeral home can take it away. So even in sudden death circumstances, often there's still police on scene. I would say if there was no body and they've just given like a parents of a death notification, the body's not there, they may just be one cruiser in the driveway when you pull in, and then once you arrive, they're leaving. They're kind of doing a warm transfer and you'd be there. So, but again, the police have made sure that the scene is secure, that it's safe for you to be there, that it's emotional support they require, but there's no significant mental health present that would cause any risk to you. So that's kind of everything that has come to mind of questions folks have had about kind of how does this work? Is there anything that maybe you want some clarification on, or have any questions or things you want me to kind of provide more details in regards to? I'll open it up right now.
Yeah, so I do have a question. So
Sure.
when you talk about like accommodations for like somebody, whether they need a hotel or shelters and stuff, when it comes to, and they don't have the money, are we paying for that as a volunteer? Like, how does that work?
No. Excellent question. So for accommodations and something like that, if a credit card would be required, it would go to the team lead.
Okay, so it
So team,
automatically just goes to the
yeah.
team.
Yeah.
Okay.
We also have arrangements made with some direct, like hotels, for just direct billing, that we just have kind of an account with them and they bill us after each use of a hotel room.
Okay.
But no, the volunteers would never be expected for accommodations to pay for that, or don't ever use your credit card. Like, just don't do it.
Yeah.
Unless you needed to, like, the only time that's you could use a credit card is if you're buying like kind of personal care items for somebody. So say you're on scene and they need food, or like diapers or wipes, or maybe they left a fire and Red Cross is not showing up or not answering and they need shoes or something like that. Something that's not going to be a significant expense, then you could obviously use your own credit card to purchase that. It's obviously not providing anyone your credit card information, and then you're expensing us.
Okay.
So there's 2 forms that will be included in the kit that you receive from Victim Services. One of them is an incident form, and that's where you're putting all of the client information that you collected on scene: names, numbers, address, and then it's also asking kind of what supports you've provided. We don't need anything detailed, just like emotional support. They needed food. They needed numbers for funeral homes. Like, it can be very point form, just so I know kind of what you've reviewed, so that when I'm following up the next day, I can kind of pull from that and take the conversation further. And then you have to sign off on it, and that's what gets sent to me. And then when you include an incident form, then I can approve an expense. So I can kind of match up what support you've provided on scene and what you've purchased kind of makes sense. Like if you were on scene for a sudden death and you submit an Earl and Angelo's invoice for $300 to feed the family, I would be like, well, they're at their home. They probably could have provided themselves with their own meal, and we wouldn't. It's just, again, that common sense. Don't use Earl and Angelo's. It's Tim Hortons, it's McDonald's. It's kind of quick meals that are affordable for a nonprofit organization to reimburse. If sometimes you might run into dietary needs, that maybe they're diabetic or maybe they're celiac. If you can obviously justify what you're buying for the individual, that's totally fine. I just need some justification, or Diane will need some justification in regards to what expenses have come through. And then you're also reimbursed for any mileage. So on that volunteer expense claim that will be included in your kit, I will also mail out like digital copies of these as well. You'll see where you can include mileage. So it's just kind of write down your starting kilometers, what they were when you started, and you are clicking kilometers from the time you leave your location of where you are when you were dispatched to the time you return to your home. So the whole way there, any driving around you do with the person, and all the way back. And it's 40 cents a kilometer of what your expense back. That has to be signed off by staff. So Diane has to sign off on that. And then it's submitted to JJ for reimbursement. I just thought of something else I need to talk about. So does that answer? That's a very long-winded answer to your question, but it kind of phased into the 2 documents that I wanted to review as well. Anybody else have any questions about what I just had chatted about?
I have a question about like using some of our own resources and stuff. So I know
Sure.
a lot of business owners within the community and stuff. Some of them run bed and breakfasts, some of them run restaurants. And I think like some of them I certainly have a rapport with that I would be able to contact them and be like, hey, I have a family that needs some food. Is it okay if I go into the restaurant and, you know, just invoice you for this, this, and this, and then do it after the fact for like some food? Is that okay to do? Like, or would I run it by the team lead first? Like, obviously nothing crazy, but I just, I don't know. I worked for a lot of people, so I can.
No, I get what you mean. Like sometimes you might be able to get a whole like 5-course meal for the same price you're going to pay at McDonald's for. Like McDonald's is friggin' expensive now when you want to go through drive-through. So absolutely, if you want to, it's just you can't obviously release any client like information.
No,
right? You got to keep that confidentiality.
Absolutely.
So it wouldn't be like, oh, you know, that fire that's going on down the road. Well, that family lost everything, and they're Mrs. and Mrs. Smith, and they really like chicken dinner. So do you want to whip something up? Obviously, that wouldn't be the case. But if you have those contacts, we've had those contacts come through for us before. But don't go out of your way to make those resources work, because sometimes there can be a bit of a time delay, obviously, right? Where if you're using Tim Hortons, McDonald's, like they're 24 hours, they're open all the time. Same with like accommodations or shelters, like they're 24 hours or emergency services. They're well versed in those processes. So it's great if you're stuck and have some contacts in the community that can work. I've definitely used that before. We had the 401, and it shut down. It was winter and it shut down the whole 401. And the amount of people that travel with like, they're going to the gym and they're in their flip flops and their gym shorts and it's -40, but they didn't think to like pack winter boots or a coat or those kind of things. So now they're stuck on the side of the road and they've run out of gas, or they have to shut their car. They had to leave their vehicles, and we coordinated a bus to come around and pick them up. But school was on, it was that kind of time frame. So it was those contacts in the community locally that I had that was able to kind of coordinate that bus to, as quickly as we did, to get up and drive everybody back to the Strathcona Paper Center where we could feed them and keep them warm until they could be taken back to their vehicles to once the 401 was back open, or have a look like someone else come and pick them up, because it was going to be in numerous amounts of hours. Not that you as a volunteer would ever be expected to coordinate a bus by any means, but I understand what you're saying, that when you are connected kind of locally to your community, there are some strings that could be easily pulled to get to help a family in need. I know in different circumstances, I've definitely reached out to our volunteers if I'm supporting a family. This isn't necessarily on scene. It would happen, but maybe I'm supporting a family that needs a bed or needs like they're starting over again. They need access to like a microwave, or they're struggling to find something. I know I've reached out to our volunteers before, and it's like, anybody like have one in their basement that they're looking to donate, to make those connections before as well. So yeah, that's kind of the basic rundown of how we get from start to finish of dispatching a volunteer. Now I kind of want to open it up to any questions. So there's 5 of us that are here, and Rochelle has already asked some great questions. Does anybody else have anything? Like, it's open to anything about the training, anything you're like apprehensive about. I know I keep saying like, once you're on scene, you'll just figure it out and you learn more with just being on scene. That's, and again, you're going to have a seasoned volunteer with you that's going to show you how it goes. Somebody ask one question.
I have a question.
Yes, Paige.
So when it comes to like confidentiality and stuff, do you always get names of the people who are involved? Because like, what if it's something where like, you know of this person and you have to go and like support them, but like maybe it's something where you don't have the best relationship with that person, or like what happens then?
So are you thinking you're getting dispatched to a scene and you arrive on scene and you realize, I know that person?
Yeah.
Is that what you're kind of asking?
Yeah.
That's completely up to you. So that has happened where maybe the location obviously didn't give it away that you were responding somewhere that you knew someone. And then you arrive on scene and you're given the name of the person you're supporting and recognizing, okay, this is like, I know this person went to high school with them, or they're my neighbor, or whatever. First step would be, it's at your discretion. So if you don't feel comfortable supporting that person on scene just because it's too close or whatever the case may be, you can say you need to find someone else to come. That's totally fine. Or what, like I was born and raised in Napanee. So, and lots of times I come into contact with people that I know. I'm comfortable with it. I think in any case I've had so far. But I always ask them. So if I'm comfortable with it, then I go and see the family. I say, I know we kind of know each other outside in the community. If you're not comfortable with me being the one providing you support, I can happily find someone else. And then if they, honestly, most times if they know you, they feel like that's an in. They like kind of, their circumstances, you kind of have a bit of a rapport with them, and they feel oftentimes supported by that and will accept you on scene. But if not, then that's fine. Or you can let the officer know, like, let them know this is my name and who the volunteer is that's coming to support them. Ask them if that's going to be okay. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Okay. Great question. If we don't have any other questions and just kind of the general area of kind of overview of what you're going to be doing next month in July when you guys all go live. Diane, do you have the bag there with you?
I do.
Okay.
I do.
So does everyone see Diane? Do they have themselves on gallery view that whatever she holds up, you can at least see? Okay, fabulous. So you're going to be provided with a kit, a volunteer bag that is fully stocked to help you kind of just, I always left mine in the trunk of my car. And then it's just there. Unless you're switching vehicles or have multiple vehicles that you can choose to drive. I will say, you'll have a chance to meet Gilbert. He's one of our volunteers. He has a motorcycle. He asked if he could take his motorcycle on scene. And I said, well, Gilbert, if you have a domestic, do you want to bring a helmet for her and have her wrapped around you on the back of that motorcycle? Probably not. So if you do have a vehicle that can accommodate more than one person, I suggest that you drive that vehicle. But obviously any mode and means of transportation that you have is more than okay. But I always just kept this in the back of my car. And then if I was at a friend's house or getting groceries, there's been lots of times I've been at like Metro and had to leave carts of groceries to go dispatch a call or leave for a call. That's kind of just the nature of the job that I'm in, but also as a volunteer, if you're on call. And I know I've reviewed that with, I think, majority of you when we were doing kind of intake and your first interview. When you're on call, like you can sleep if you're covering nights. It's just making sure your phone's on and your ringer's on. And if the call comes in, you can answer it. And if you like want to go get groceries or you want to do gardening or you want to go visit a friend, all of those things are totally fine as long as you're not consuming alcohol. And I always request you kind of stay in our catchment area. So be within Hastings, Prince Edward, Lennox, and Addington. You live in Belleville, and I'm calling to dispatch you to Quinte West. I don't want you to tell me that you're in Costco in Kingston when you're on call. Yes, that has happened before. And I love Costco. Like I am a huge Costco fan. If you want to know where I am Fridays, I'm normally at Costco. And I love their $1.50 hot dogs and Found Pop. But anyways, that's how much I love Costco. You always feel like you're getting a deal. Like I just spent like $500 on food, but I'm going to get that $1.50 hot dog and a pop because that's a deal. Total aside. But anyways, I ask that you do stay in the catchment area when you're on call. As I said, don't consume alcohol, but you don't have to be just sitting by like crush Netflix all day and wait for the phone to ring to get called out. Like you can just go about your day and just know that if you have to leave, you have to leave. If you do have kids, that could be a bit of a juggle if you're at the grocery store with 3 kids and you get a call and you have to run home, but that's what you have to do. That's what you have to do. Just kind of be mindful of that, but that's where it's helpful to keep the kit in your car if you're wanting to go out and about. So Diane, without further ado, why don't you pull out an item from our kit?
Sure.
And I will explain it.
You've got, let's go with this first.
All right. First runner up, first in the kit is your victim services shirt. As I said, make sure that logo is covered up if you're ever attending a domestic at a hospital or the police station. These are not necessarily required to wear by any means. But one thing to keep in mind when you are attending scenes, maybe you're attending a home where everybody smokes in the house, or they don't necessarily have the same hygiene that you would. So I always liked having kind of my victim services wear set out, that this is what I would wear when I'm attending a call. When I'm working, that's not always the case, but that way, if it stinks, I can't get the smell out, it's something I can just throw out and ask for a new one. But that's just kind of a tip from doing this as long as I have. Always keep your shoes on when you go into a victim's home. When you're attending on scene, don't feel that you need to take them off. Police do not take off their boots. Fire do not take off their boots. You do not need to take off your boots. Again, you can use your discretion. There are some homes that I have attended that I feel comfortable taking off my shoes, but it is not required. Because I've also been in homes where the cleanliness of the home has been disgusting, and I still didn't feel safe with boots on, let's just put it that way. So don't feel that you have to. Next up, Diane. Our reflector vest. Again, I don't expect you to wear this if you're going to support a sudden death in their home, but this is going to come in handy if you're doing any 401, any roadside, anything outside. We've had an unfortunate circumstance where we were pretty close to being clipped by a car, but we want to make sure that you're safe and seen, and so reflective vests are a must. But again, we trust that you'll use your judgment on when and where to use that. But anything outside that's around vehicles and nighttime, anything, that would be a good time to use it. Next, Diane. Quilt. So these are donated to us by the lovely quilts ladies from Belleville. They make beautiful quilts, and we used to have a volunteer, Sharon, that started donating these to us, and they can be left with the person that you're supporting. So they're part of your kit. If you're at a fire and someone needs a blanket, you need, wherever you are, if you feel that they need the blanket, maybe the child latches onto it, wants something to keep them warm, feel free to leave it with them. We have more, we can replace them. You don't have to ask for it back. Same with, like, if you have stuffed animals, I think Diane's probably going to pull out stuffed animals that are in there. They can be left with the people that you're supporting as well. We have lots of stuffed animals. Don't feel you need to collect it. And anybody that, like, if you're returning home and want to restock your bag, you're probably thinking, sweet, I can get rid of some of my kids' stuffies that are taking over the rooms. So you don't need to come to our office to be restocked. You can just pull from your own household. I am guilty of doing that. It's like, I friggin' hate this one that has this sound. I have this dolphin one that it's like, I can't wait to get rid of that thing. It's going in the bag. It'll drive me nuts on scene, but I won't have to hear it anymore. Or you can come to the office and Diane will be more than happy to restock your kit. Next up. So this is our PPE bag. So this is kind of new in the last year and a half of requiring PPE. I don't see that going away anytime soon. So it's going to have your sanitizers, your masks, everything that's required, gloves. I think there's even a hazmat suit in there that you are more than welcome to use. It's whatever you feel safe, and it's at your discretion of what is required. Whoever's on scene may give you direction, but masks are obviously something that are required right now. And that can be restocked as well. Everything that we provide you can be restocked. The reflective vests are really expensive to replace. So if there's anything you can keep tabs on, that thing I would suggest you keep your eyes on. So this is a grief and bereavement package that has been floating around our office for a number of years, but it's one of the resources I find the most helpful for families who have experienced loss. It goes through step-by-step instructions of, like, where to start with reaching out. It talks about, like, things you have to consider canceling. It talks about things like how to get a death certificate, whether you want to do burial, cremation, how to get urns, like all of those pieces. So we have multiple copies of that. So again, that can be left with the family, as well as this was provided to us by Bereavement Association of Ontario, and it goes into death around funeral burials, all of that as well. We have multiple copies of that at the office. So we kind of provide your kit with what you need, but don't feel that you need to get it back or write it out when you're there. You can leave it for a resource for them to review and keep. So this is our victim services safety planning. So this will be really helpful for any domestics that you're supporting, or criminal harassment, human trafficking, anybody that needs to have information on safety planning. If you even want to, and our card. But you could leave that whole package with a domestic client if they were needing some safety planning. It might be helpful for you to, I think there's safety planning. Is there safety planning in the online training? This is a bit embarrassing that I'm asking you guys this, but if you're wanting to more like freshen up on that or elaborate on that, it'd be good material to review, or you could just review it with the person. So this was given to us by Public Health. This is not for you to use on someone else. So this is if you come in contact with fentanyl. This is for you to use. Not that I don't even really need to put them. I don't. Do we have any in the office, Diane? Do we still have them?
We have tons.
Okay. Honestly, this is just a way of getting rid of them.
Yes, I think so.
Don't feel you have to keep them in your kit. One thing to know is that they do have to be stored at room temperature. So you can't keep your bag in your car with noxicillin in your vehicle. And they do expire. That won't be we're just trying to get rid of them, to be honest. So that's why they're going in the volunteer bags, but you would never be expected to use that on anybody. The only time you would be is if you needed to use it on yourself, but we promise you, we are not putting you in those circumstances.
Exactly.
So coloring books and crayons, again, that's just stuff to keep kids entertained when you're at detachment, home, hospital. We want to give you those.
Little
books. And a lot of the places like hospitals and police stations, they're going to have a lot of that stuff sitting around too that you can pull on as well, which is helpful.
Just your little victim services button.
Oh, so we always have like
Pins.
swag around the office too. I hate clutter. So I was like, ooh, let's give it to our volunteers. They can wear a pin, because that's helpful. So these are your lanyards for your badge will be attached to. Also with your badge will go in the front, and then we stock it with business cards in the back. Whether you keep it like that is totally up to you. But I just find my practice is I leave my kit in the car. Unless I'm going to a hospital, because that's a really far way to walk back, I would take it with me. But if I'm just parked outside the home or just outside the detachment, I often leave my kit in the car and I go back and get it if I need it. That's just my practice. You'll find what works for you. But having my lanyard on with my ID and business cards in the back is super helpful, because if I can use my phone and write out information and just leave my business card, then. But you may feel more comfortable in the beginning just having everything on you and knowing that you're prepared no matter what throws at you. But so do whatever works for you. But the lanyard will hold your badge. So this is kind of your resource book. It's kind of like your Google. You're welcome to use Google. This is where you'll find the map of our catchment area. That's an expense claim right there on the left-hand side that Diane is showing. But there's also a resource list. So it's organized by food banks, accommodations, funeral homes, everything is categorized. So if you're looking for something specific, you can go right to there and it's going to tell you in what county. It's kind of a quick reference guide for you. We used to have a pamphlet holder and we'd have all these pamphlets in for you to give out, but there's so many pamphlets, unless you are, I find, well connected in the community and kind of do social services for a day job, I would be overwhelmed looking at that and be like, I don't even know what I'm looking for. So I found the resource book was more practical, where you're writing out the sexual assault number, or you're writing out interval house numbers, because I'm also going to be following up with them the following day or within the next few business days, and I can always mail out that stuff if they need it, or email them, is how this day of the world works too. I just send them links to everything that they need.
And we also had some of the personal alarms, which I've added in as well.
So something that was probably donated to us, but it's for domestics that they can keep it on their keychain and it makes a loud screaming noise. once activated. So that can just be, again, something you give a domestics client that's has safety concerns.
That's it.
That's it.
That's all she
Now,
wrote for the
You are
kit.
welcome to, as you kind of get on scene, you're going to maybe have more things that you, or tools that you feel are helpful. As I said, I think in one of the other trainings, one of our volunteers always brings water bottles and offers those as kind of an icebreaker to anyone they're supporting on scene. But again, not that I expect you to carry around water bottles all the time. It's whatever you feel comfortable with. And you can add, like I've added like Play-Doh to my bag because kids can entertain themselves with that longer than a coloring book or a book or a stuffy. So it's just whatever you find. You're not expected to by any means, totally at your discretion. But the badge is, and the reflective vest, I would say, are the two important things to keep on. Any questions about the kit? Pretty straightforward. You guys all have common sense and problem solving skills. You're gonna be great. Good job. I knew I selected the right group of people. Wonderful. So we're still in the works of waiting for some of our products or our bags actually that we're going to put our stuff in and
Oh, actually,
t-shirts.
they came today.
Oh, perfect.
That's actually how I did the volunteer bags. They actually showed up
Wonderful.
finally.
So that will be one of the things that Diane's assigned to kind of follow up after once I leave, is getting all of you folks connected with your kits. So arranging pickup or drop off, or so Diane will be reaching out once all of those kits are together. I think I'm still waiting on a few selfies from a few folks or ID badges. If you wait too long, I will creep you on Facebook and use your profile pic. So if you don't want me to use that, then I suggest you send me something. And that will get your badges ready. So if you can send me those along with the documents, I'm going to send out emails tomorrow of items that I'm missing from folks or stuff I'm missing altogether. But Diane, as I said, Diane will be responsible for connecting with you and setting up a time for you to pop by the office, or if it's convenient to meet somewhere else, I'll leave that to Diane to figure out where and when that will happen. But ideally, we want you on the schedule for July. That was my overall goal when we started this training session, was to get you all on the schedule for July. So I'm going to move, if there's no further questions about the kits or what's in the bag or any of that, I'll move into kind of what to expect when it comes from a schedule and volunteering.
Sorry, I
So-
just have a quick
Yep.
question. So I tried to send you, I noticed that 2 of the documents didn't send.
Okay.
And I tried to send it to you over the weekend, but it said that your mailbox was full.
That's how busy I am, Shiloh. It's my
Okay,
mailbox
okay.
is maxed out.
Okay.
I figured that would probably affect a lot of you trying to send me documents. I'm like, sweet. So today I went through all that and cleared some of it out. But I have too many photos. That's why my iCloud stuff doesn't want to work, because I don't have enough space. But I have another Gmail account that I will be sending out and corresponding with. I'm 4 days out. So I felt like that was a confusing thing to now all of a sudden start emailing from a different email. But if you want to try, I cleared everything out. So you should be able to send it through tonight. As of today, I've been receiving and sending emails again. I deleted 400 photos and a lot of emails, so I should be able to have some space to get me through until the end of this week. And then, or I'll be sending you Diane's confirmation or information as well, so you could send it to her as well. So going into scheduling. So you're going to hear from Diane probably either end of this week or next week, and you will be included in the email going out to all volunteers. And it will just say, July is right around the corner. This is our welcome. We'll probably do welcome like to our new recruits. Excited to get everyone on scene and on the schedule. Please submit and it's always very vague, like volunteer hours. And you are just to know that you are to submit 3 shifts, 3 12-hour shifts. Hours are from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. or 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. the following day. If that doesn't work with your work schedule and you need some modifications made to that, let us know. We can definitely find something that's going to work. But we kind of reviewed all of that in your original interviews as well. You're donating your time, and we will make something, we'll make it work. We'll make it happen, Captain. So once you just reply to the emails, and I always send, and Diane will hopefully take over this, we always confirm that we've received your hours. It's very much a first come, first serve. So once I have 2 volunteers on each date, it's no longer available. So obviously getting your hours to me sooner rather than later, if you don't have a lot of availability, is helpful. Again, I'm not too stern on that. There are some flexibilities if you don't have a lot, and you're new recruits right now too. So I'm not really worried about when you can volunteer. It's more the seasoned volunteers and getting them well dispersed over the schedule so that we have lots and lots of coverage for our new recruits to go out. So you'll send your hours, or maybe you have flexibility. I have some volunteers that are like, I'm retired, or I'm available every weekend, or I don't mind going out on nights during the week. So they just wait until they'll wait a couple days or a week, and then they'll say what's vacant. And then they're happy to fill in whatever spots that I need filled. So whatever works for you, we'll make it work. And that's all there is to scheduling. And then, as I said, the team leads are often going to reach out to you, or the staff are going to reach out to you in the morning. If you're on call during the week, like a working week, Monday to Friday, I always text the volunteers in the morning, try to, and say, hey, it's Stella, just touching base with my volunteer on seat or on call today. So just that recognition and like confirmation that I got your hours. Yes, I have the right person, or a friendly reminder that, oh, right, I am on call today. Some people forget, or maybe you got called into work and you can't volunteer anymore. Maybe you woke up sick, or maybe your kid's sick, or you can't go out on call. Like, it just kind of opens up that conversation in the morning that if circumstances have changed, then we can address them then, no big deal. And then volunteer or team leads, if you're covering nights and weekends, are reaching out to you either at the beginning of the week or daily. Each one does it kind of different. And then you're on the schedule and you're just kind of sitting there waiting. Hopefully not too anxiously, but just knowing that if something tragic is happening in our community, that we have the ability to help those folks through that worst time, and keep you humble. And you'll have calls that you feel like you did nothing, but you'll have calls that you felt that you did great work. And we will tell you that you did great work regardless. But I will say, doing this for over a decade, that it definitely gives you a new perspective in life and definitely keeps you appreciative of the small things. And it helps build a resume, and it gives you exposure to a lot of different things that some agencies don't like. Other agencies are very specific in what they are able to respond to, but we have a wide scope of what we can do and what we can provide support for. I'll go into confidentiality, or when duty to report. So I know everyone's really good, or you had to kind of pass that question on your interview of what confidentiality is and what it means to you. The only time we have a duty to report is if obviously children are involved and under the age of 16 and you have safety concerns for them, which is your duty to report as a civilian in any other capacity as well. Or if anybody is threatening to harm someone or themselves, then that's another duty to report. But again, scenes are more often than not secure and safe for your attendance. And those things have all been kind of vetted out prior to you getting there. That's something that I have to review. Any questions about that? The scheduling process, and it's very straightforward. Diane will send an email. You just need to respond.
That's it.
That's it.
I have a couple questions.
I love
So
couple
let's just say we put in our hours and stuff, but we are kind of open to be on call if something's close by or something. Do we just let somebody know that that's the case, that we are free if you're in a bind, that you could call us up and let us know? Okay, awesome. And then what was my second question? I forgot my second question, but I will remember it.
Let me elaborate on what you just kind of said. So because obviously I'm stepping away from a year, it won't be me that you create a relationship with. It will be, well, continue creating a relationship with. It will be Diane that you kind of continue creating that rapport with. And when I look at a schedule, I know based on just conversations had over the phone, who's more like, who has flexibility in their day-to-day work life or personal life to maybe just drop everything they're doing. Maybe they're retired, maybe they work from home, maybe they don't have kids, maybe they are shift work, whatever the case may be. Those rapports are kind of built with the volunteer coordinator, so they're able to elaborate on that. And you can be, I can say with confidence that you will get called when you're not on call, and you won't be called when you are on call, if that makes any sense to you at all. So whenever we have a call that comes in and say we have no one on call, or say we have a call in, I'll use you, Shiloh, because I know you're kind of in that central Hastings region. We have a call in Tweed, and our volunteer that's on call is from Bloomfield. It's like, okay, that's going to be a really long response time for them. Let me see if I can get in touch with a few of our volunteers in central Hastings first to see if they could attend. And we might start there and just say, hey, Shiloh, like if you're available for a call, you would have a much shorter response time. Would you be able to attend? If you're not on call, obviously you are more than happy to say no, like it's not going to work for me today. Don't be expected to attend those calls if we're calling you out of the blue. But oftentimes, because we have such a large, vast catchment area, we have to be strategic like that sometimes in order to, like if we, same with Bancroft, like I often start, we only have one volunteer in Bancroft. So if I have to start in Center Hastings and kind of work my way back from there to find a volunteer. Did you think of your second question?
I did think of my second question. So let's just say you're called to a scene and somebody's venting, and part of their venting process, they are threatening the person that did them injustice. Now, would we just put that down as like a note to the team lead or something, or is that something that we have to report further?
No. I mean, I think it depends within reason and use your discretionary skills there. I thought you were going to say vent about police, because you'll hear that too. Them unhappy with kind of police presence or how they dealt with the situation or didn't deal with the situation. But again, if they're that irate and angry, police aren't necessarily going to leave us with them. I wouldn't say anger as much as often as like angry at you or that angry with someone else. I see often on scene. They might be angry with the person that chose to like take their own life, or like that frustration piece of sadness and anger, but not to the piece you're speaking of. But I think I would have to say you're just like, if you're obviously very concerned and have reasons that this person is going to fall through in this act, I'd reach out to police that are on scene with you and be like, okay, this is what this person is saying. I have a bit of concerns that they're a bit unstable right now. And yes, they may be venting, but whether the police caution them, whether they decide like they can take it from there.
Okay. Thank you.
So if no one has any further questions, the last thing I want to touch on, normally I have a bit of a presentation, but I honestly forgot until right now, is just kind of tell you who else is in the office and who our staff members are. So you have obviously spoken to me throughout this whole process, but there are a few other staff members to make you aware of that help the agency turn and keep everyone supported in our community, because we get quite a few calls. Like it's not uncommon for us to get 300 to 500 referrals a month. And they, like, when I started, our referrals were maybe like between 30 and 50 a month. So I think that shows to how much our agency has grown in significance, and also being present and available in our community, building rapport with police and being able to provide supports that are beneficial to our community. But we're definitely busy and need a lot of staff to help support that. So I'm going to speak once I leave what that those staff members are going to look like. So I covered the Napanee, like Lennox and Addington. I case manage all of those victims that are impacted by crime for Lennox and Addington. That piece is being replaced by Brittany Running. She has attended some of our trainings in the very beginning because she was coming on as a new staff member as well. So she'll be sitting out of the Napanee detachment and will be doing the case management for anyone impacted by crime or tragic circumstance in Lennox and Addington County. So that's Brittany Running. She's obviously new with us and just started 2 weeks ago. So Diane will now be our volunteer coordinator, and she will be sitting under the Belleville office, which is located at 250 Sydney Street, and coordinating and implementing all anything to do volunteer aspects, doing recruiting, training, the scheduling, keeping our volunteers that are current, up to date on information, replenishing kits, and all of that is entailed with the volunteer coordinator piece. We have 3 other staff members that sit at 250 Sydney with Diane. We have Kelsey Wadforth. She's the case manager for all of Belleville and Center Hastings. Well, pretty much everything in Hastings falls into Kelsey's lap, right from Bancroft's, Madoc, Tweed, Sterling, and Belleville. She is managing all of those cases. So folks needing to access any financial support through our Victim Quick Response program, or just looking for information and referrals in those areas, she's following up with them. We also have I won't go into too much detail, but a contract with the Quinte West, the city of Quinte West. So she does what's called the bail notification program. Anybody who's been charged with a criminal offense and has a victim in Quinte West will receive support from Kelsey following a bail. So bail is part of the court process that people are held for bail to be released on, or have the ability to be released on conditions back into the community. And Kelsey sits through bail court every day when we have folks involved from Quinte West, and notifies those people that have been impacted by that crime of the outcome of court. So that has been funded by the city of Quinte West, and we're quite a few years in. I want to say like 5 or 7 years in to operating that for the city of Quinte West, which is great. So those are kind of the 2 hats that Kelsey wears. And then we have Carrie Latondra, and Carrie actually used to be a volunteer with us, quite an active volunteer, and she's now our human trafficking specialist. I'm honestly not quite familiar. She just started in April of all the details, but I know she's taking over kind of the education side of educating the public on human trafficking. So she's also a great resource that Diane will be able to use, having the volunteer experience and what on scene looks like. She resides in Central Hastings, so she was often one of those gals that I would call to any of those calls in Bancroft or in the north, and Carrie was always available to attend. So she has lots of experience with our agency. I think she's been a volunteer at minimum 5 years, if not longer than that. So now she's wearing also a hat of an educator of human trafficking. And then we have our executive director, Jennifer Cormier. She goes by JJ. She sits at the Belleville office as well, and she is the head of the agency and kind of makes sure the funding's coming through, and deals with all stats and ministry and checks and board of directors, all of those pieces. So she just keeps all the wheels moving and everybody supported, and making sure everyone has what they have to make the agency run well. And then we have, last but not least, Haley Leach. Haley is our second most seasoned staff member that we have. She sits out of the Quinte West OPP. So she is also a case manager, or crisis intervention liaison, I think it's her title. So she sits out of the Quinte West detachment, and she case manages everything out of the Quinte West OPP and Picton. So those are kind of her 2 case loads that she carries, and making sure that anyone that's been impacted by crime there is getting the right supports and follow-up contact to get supported. So, and then we have all of you. So our case managers are dealing with the referrals that come into the office during Monday to Friday, but our volunteers are who are responding to the calls, to the live calls, the things that are unfolding right now where people need supports. Staff are always back up and we're able to go if we don't have any volunteers on scene, but our volunteers is who we really rely on to help us be able to provide both kind of ends of the spectrum and that support. Folks that have been impacted by crime a few hours ago or a few days ago, or I guess a few days ago from staff perspective, and getting kind of all those programs rolled out, getting them the right financial supports that they need, connected to the right resources. And then we have our volunteers that are able to provide that support as it's live. So if police are requesting us on scene, then they're able to attend, and that we couldn't do our organization without our volunteers, because we can't be two places at once. And we've grown to provide such great support in our community that we'd be stretching ourselves too thin without volunteers. So thank you. At the end of all that, thank you for donating your time with us and wanting to join our agency and make a difference in your community. It definitely takes a certain person to do that. So we appreciate you. I'm gonna take some water. So any questions in regards to that? I mean, hopefully we can do like a volunteer appreciation and we can all actually be together and you can see these people in person and kind of create relationships with our fellow volunteers and make it more of a community feel than just an individual isolated feel. Because I'm sure you've been doing this all over Zoom, so it doesn't really give you the, I don't know, creating peers or relationships kind of coming on as a volunteer with a whole bunch of you. Like there's 11 of you coming on right now as new recruits, and normally we would all be in the same room and having coffee and side conversations and kind of building rapport with folks. But hopefully we get back to that again, and then you feel like more part of the organization, and as opposed to just Zoom meetings and emails that you receive from this lady named Stella that's always demanding hours. It's like, oh, I really need to touch base with people in more of a me asking for stuff manner, but here we are. Any last questions before we wrap this up? It's an hour and 15 minutes. That's not bad. All right. Diane, have I forgotten to review anything, or do you think that's?
Nope, not that I can think of. You covered everything that I was thinking of as well. No,
Okay.
No, that was perfect.
If I've missed anything, please reach out. But Diane and I will be following up just to conclude of arranging kits and how to get that to you. If there's any documents that are left outstanding, getting those copies. And then you'll be receiving an email either end of week this week or next week with getting you on the schedule. So obviously, if you're taking shifts at the beginning of July, you're going to want to make sure your paperwork, your ID, your selfies, and your kit are all completed so that you have the right documents in place to be successful, or for us to actually have you as an active volunteer. All right. Thanks for joining me on this lovely Monday evening. And I'm going to stop the recording if I can figure out how to do that.